We are back with some more Dynasty Deep Stashes. As always, guys, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. And we are here with the 16 NFC teams. Yesterday, or the last video we put out a couple days ago, were all the AFC teams. Now we're talking NFC teams. So let's just jump right into it. Starting off with Jordan Watkins, the 49ers wide receiver. Originally I had Isaiah Nayer on here, but I just saw that he was cut actually today. So, or maybe it was yesterday. Hopefully none of these other guys, I made some of these graphics a couple of days ago, and this video might come out in a couple of days from recording it. So hopefully no one else gets cut in between there. But Jordan Watkins for the San Francisco 49ers, he's probably rostered in most leagues just because he was drafted in the fourth round, and usually fourth round rookies are going to be at least rostered on most leagues, unless you play in a bit shallower leagues. But it's worth adding. I mean, Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings kind of beat up. Ricky Pearsall, Demarcus Robinson, Jacob Cowing. Like, you have a lot of guys, a lot of question marks there where, a guy like Jordan Watkins could be relied on as soon as this year if guys like Ayuk and Jennings and Cowing are all hurt. That really thins out that wide receiver core. So a guy like Jordan Watkins, who apparently has been doing well in camp, could be a guy to potentially go up and stash on your team over the next several weeks to see how it plays out during training camp. Xavier Weaver for the Arizona Cardinals. If you are familiar with the channel and you watched last year when we do our Dynasty waiver wire show, Xavier Weaver was consistently on that segment. He's a taller receiver. He's 6'1", 170-ish. He was an undrafted rookie wide receiver out of Colorado last year. Didn't really do anything last year, but remained on the team. Arizona is another one of those teams where you look at the depth chart and you see obviously Marvin Harrison Jr., and then you get a lot of kind of question marks beyond that. I mean, Michael Wilson is established as kind of that wide receiver 2 for the team, but is he one of those guys that can't be replaced? No. Zay Jones, who's going to be, I believe, or he is 30 years old, is currently their wide receiver 3. Greg Dortch, Simi Fehoko. There's just a lot of question marks after Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, obviously you have Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr., probably Michael Wilson. But beyond that, who's the wide receiver 3, 4, 5 for this team? I think someone like Xavier Weaver, who I think can play on the outside, kind of fill that Michael Wilson role a little bit. Is he better? I don't know, but I think he has a chance to kind of prove himself in the training camp and during the preseason. Konata Mumpfield, I believe, if I'm saying that right. Hopefully I am. Out of Pittsburgh, rookie wide receiver for the Rams. And he's getting a lot of hype. I had someone comment on the video yesterday of I'm stashing him everywhere, and I kind of said, he's someone that I'm having on my on this video. He's someone that I'm going to add to this video because he's apparently kind of impressing people. I kind of looked at his stats from Pittsburgh, and a guy who is productive every single year for 4 straight years in college. Played at Akron for his first year, and then 3 years at Pitt, and he was just always productive. He never had a massive season, but he was always productive. Undrafted guy. He's 6'1", 185, 190, right around there. And he's been getting a lot of hype. A lot of people have been hyping him up, and just you kind of trust the team like the Rams to be able to find these type of players. So they're always going to get that bump because of the Puka Nacua or even Jordan Whittington type of find last year. We're always going to be a little bit excited when we start hearing this guy being hyped for the Rams. So I would be adding him everywhere just to see how it turns out. And this is another team where it's okay, you have Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, Tutu Atwell, and then what? What's behind those guys? Jordan Whittington, who I like, Mumpfield, Xavier Smith, Britton Covey, a lot of question marks after those first 3 guys. And Puka is consistently hurt. Devontae Adams is getting a bit older. Tutu Atwell is a smaller guy. So he's definitely a guy, Mumpfield, that I'm going to be stashing. Ricky White III for the Seattle Seahawks. Now, what's funny with the Seahawks is I really wanted to put AJ Barner on this list, but I felt weird saying someone who's listed as the tight end 1 for the team is a deep stash, but it kind of feels that way. So he's kind of a he's kind of a honorable mention is the right word that I'm trying to think of here is AJ Barner, because I think Barner could be the tight end one for this team. And I'm kind of looking at like how much he's rostered. He's rostered almost 50% of leagues, AJ Barner. So not quite a deep stash, but just in case, I think he could be pretty good. But instead, we're talking about Ricky White the third. Really, no one else I could choose from here. But Ricky White is an intriguing player because he's another guy that, he had some huge productive years in college, specifically his last 2 years in 2023 and 2024. 2023, he put up over almost 1,500 receiving yards, and then last year over 1,000 receiving yards, 11 touchdowns. Again, played at UNLV, so not the greatest competition, but just a guy who, again, you kind of look at Seattle, and right now they have a fifth round wide receiver on their depth chart as the wide receiver 3, which means to me that there's a whole lot of question marks outside of JSN and Cooper Kupp. You have JSN, you have Cooper Kupp, probably MVS, and then what? Torrey Horton, Jake Bobo, Ricky White. You telling me a guy like Ricky White potentially can't be better or outplay a fifth round rookie or a guy like Jake Bobo, right? Seventh round pick, is it likely? No, but I do think there's some possibilities for him to make that 5 or 6 wide receiver room, 5 or 6 wide receivers that they'll probably keep, that a guy like Ricky White will have a potential to make that. He has really, really good chance to do it. Sion Vake, the running back for the Lions, another guy who was on the waiver wire show all of last year. A lot of people forget this is a former third round pick. This is a guy who, fourth round pick, but still, he was a former fourth round pick, a guy that had really good draft capital. Fourth round pick for running backs is not as much of a death note as it is for a wide receiver or quarterback. They drafted him in the fourth round, even knowing they had Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Now, they still also have Craig Reynolds, so he's kind of fighting for that RB3 spot, but he's kind of a guy that, if one of the two main guys gets hurt, they're probably going to use multiple running backs if it's early on in the year. And so a guy like Sion Vake, who's going into his second year, he was kind of a safety running back hybrid, big on special teams and things like that. Does he kind of get a potential expanded role and becomes the RB3 for the Lions? And we kind of just want to roster every running back that's on some teams, right? Lions are one of those teams. We want every single running back that's on their team. Emanuel Wilson, I put him up here, and I kind of put him up here as well with Chris Brooks is the other one. I kind of put them together. Now, I chose Emanuel Wilson as kind of in the picture here, but everything I'm going to say for Emanuel Wilson, I say the same thing for Chris Brooks. I don't think a lot of people realized this last year, but like Emanuel Wilson was used. I know Josh Jacobs was awesome, but Emanuel Wilson had over 100 touches last year, 100 carries last year. So it's not like he was just nothing. Now, 100 carries is not going to do anything for fantasy, but it shows you that the team, kind of trusted him a little bit to be the RB2. Now, we're all assuming, obviously, Josh Jacobs RB1, Marshawn Lloyd RB2, but what if Marshawn Lloyd is just not quite ready? He has another injury from what I could see. This was a couple of days ago where I think it's some kind of hamstring injury or groin injury for Marshawn Lloyd. And that was kind of his issue last year. Just couldn't stay healthy. And we see it with Kendre Miller, right? Guys that we think have potential. They were drafted with decent draft capital, third round, but they feel like there are opportunities there, but they can't get a hold of it because they're just always injured or not around or whatever. That Marshawn Lloyd seems to be kind of heading that way a little bit as he hurts his groin in camp again. So what if a guy like Emanuel Wilson, who also has a questionable injury tag by him, but what if he's the RB2? What if Chris Brooks is the RB2 and something happens to Josh Jacobs? We could be looking at a smash play in a guy like Emanuel Wilson or Chris Brooks. Again, we're all assuming it's Marshawn Lloyd because that's all what we all want it to be. But it just might not happen for him. Sam Howell, I kind of sneakily, like, Sam Howell was involved in like the draft day trade where they sent him over from Seattle, I believe, to Minnesota. And man, I just kind of think about, like, if Sam Howell was the starting quarterback for the Vikings, couldn't you see him putting up similar numbers to a Sam Darnold? Couldn't you? I mean, up until last year, Sam Howell had a better season than Sam Darnold ever had. In Sam Howell's what was it, 2023 season. Now it wasn't great. He threw a lot of interceptions. It took a lot of sacks, but he threw for almost 4,000 yards and 21 touchdowns. You telling me that KOC gets a hold of him with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson, that Sam Howell couldn't put up similar numbers to what Darnold did last year? So, McCarthy would have to get injured or just be a complete disaster for that to happen. But he's a rookie who could struggle. This is a team that wants to win now. Does a guy like Sam Howell get an opportunity at any point this year? We will see. Kyle Manungi for the Bears wasn't really a great choice here. I think Manungi is probably rostered on most dynasty teams. I mean, he was drafted. He was drafted on a lot of dynasty teams in the third, fourth round. So just had to throw someone in here for the Bears. Couldn't think of anyone better. To be honest, no one at the wide receiver core or tight end or quarterback position. And so I throw Manungi in here just in case he is out there. I mean, yeah, 7th round pick, but he's in a team where there's, they have Swift and Roshan, but some question marks there. So snatch up Manungi if he is out there. Bo Collins, someone that honestly, before doing research for this video, I didn't really know a lot about. I remember hearing his name because he played at Notre Dame, and obviously Notre Dame was very relevant last year. And then I looked it up and I'm like, okay, yeah, Bo Collins played at Clemson, Notre Dame, had some productive numbers, nothing amazing, but kind of a tall, skinny type of player. He's like, I believe 6'3", under 200 pounds type of player. But Bo Collins seems to be kind of like making a name for himself a little bit at the training camp for the New York Giants. And again, you think about the New York Giants, it's like, okay, you think they have kind of their established three, right? You think they have, obviously Neighbors, Wandale, Slayton. What's behind them? You look at the depth chart. Jalen Hyatt, kind of been a bust. Lil Jordan Humphrey, no thank you. Gunnar Olszewski, I forget how to say his name, but he's more of the special teams type of guy. Zach Pascal, Amir Smith-Marset. Like, there's a lot of question marks beyond the top three. I think the top three are a lock to make the team. And then there's a whole lot of questions. You got to keep 5 or 6 wide receivers. I think they only have 3 as locks. So a guy like Bo Collins, who's, again, making a name for himself, trying to work his way up, the depth chart and stuff like that, I think it's going to be interesting to watch. I would throw him on my roster. Is he going to be better than anything than the wide receiver 4 for the Giants? No, but that's still going to provide some value in these deeper dynasty leagues. Next up, I had people ask about him or mention him, Jakori Kroski Merritt. Man, I was trying to go back and look about when I first talked about Jakori Kroski Merritt. I want to say it was back in February or March. I made a specific video on him, a deep dynasty stash video only specifically talking about Kroski Merritt and his analytics and underlying numbers and all of that. But I have been talking about him a lot before. We were doing rookie mock drafts for months. And I was always mentioning Jakori Kroski Merritt, and now he's getting a lot of love. I like Jakori Kroski Merritt a lot. I don't even know if I consider him a deep stash because he's going to be rostered on a lot of teams. But I think Jakori Kroski Merritt is awesome. I think that running back room is pretty wide open. I think, Brian Robinson, a solid running back who will get you what you need, but cannot kind of create more. Austin Eckler has his job. Jeremy McNichols, Chris Rodriguez Jr. Give me Jakori Kroski Merritt to, potentially become the RB2 and take over Brian Robinson's job. Maybe that's a little bit extreme, but I'm really, really excited about the guy. Go and pick him up if he's still out there. Montreal Johnson Jr., running back for the Eagles, out of Florida. I chose Montreal Johnson Jr. Because for a couple reasons. He's an undrafted guy, productive at Florida, for 4 years. Never had huge numbers, but a guy who could catch the ball a little bit. He has a good size. He's like 5'11", 205 or something. So he has a good running back size. He has, decent production and things like that. But then you think about the Eagles, and again, Eagles are one of those teams. Whoever is the running back for the Eagles, you're going to want them. Obviously, no one's going to be as good as Saquon Barkley. This team made Miles Sanders have a career year. DeAndre Swift have a career year. This offensive line and this running back. Are you telling me like Montreal Johnson Jr. doesn't have a chance? You look beyond Saquon Barkley. You got Will Shipley, who I don't think we know much about him. I know in terms of how good he is in the NFL. I know we want him to be a thing, but we got to be kind of honest with ourselves. Like he could not be a thing. Will Shipley. You have AJ Dillon, who we kind of know what AJ Dillon is now, and then Montreal Johnson Jr., who potentially could make this team. And so I want to be stashing every team that's on the roster for the Philadelphia Eagles. Brian Flournoy for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, honestly, this could be take your pick of any wide receiver to stash. So, you have CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. You have your top two guys. Beyond that, it's, you have Kevontae Turpin, who I think is more of a role player. He has his role, special teams guy, gadget type of player. He's going to make big plays. I like Kevontae Turpin if you play in any type of return yardage type of leagues. But beyond Lamb, Pickens, and Turpin, you have Jalen Tolbert, Jonathan Mingo, Jalen Brooks, Ryan Flournoy, Jalen Cropper. It's kind of like take your pick of players, Mingo, Brooks, or Flournoy, or Cropper, and whoever you want to stash, if you do want to stash anyone, do it. Because the door is kind of open for someone to be a wide receiver 3 for this team. I don't necessarily believe it's Jalen Tolbert. I think Jalen Tolbert will be the wide receiver 3, but I also think if they can find someone better, and that I don't think that's necessarily too hard to do, that they could easily be the wide receiver 3 for this team. So take your pick again of all those wide receivers that I just listed for the Dallas Cowboys. Into the NFC South, we have Casey Washington, wide receiver of the Falcons. Again, I was a big Casey Washington guy heading into last year, just because the Falcons were also one of those teams where it's just like, look at their wide receiver depth chart. Now, it became better because it's like, obviously Drake London, Darnell Mooney kind of had a resurgent year. Ray McLeod really stepped up last year, which I didn't expect. Going into last year, it was kind of London and Mooney, and that was it because Rondale Moore had tore his Achilles, right? And so I was kind of like, hey, Casey Washington. Again, look at the depth chart for the Falcons. I think you have the top 3 locked up. Drake London, Darnell Mooney, and Ray McLeod. Beyond that, who's going to round out the wide receivers 4, 5, and potentially 6 for the Atlanta Falcons? You have Cordero Hodge, who's been on the Falcons for the last 3 years, but the guy's also, I believe, 30 years old, and he's more of just probably just a special teams type of guy, which is why he'll probably have a roster spot. You have DJ Shark, Jamal Agnew, Chris Blair, a lot of question marks there, but man, Casey Washington, I think, has some talent, and if he can show that talent in the training camp, potentially he makes it on the team as a wide receiver 4/5, and then who knows from there from injuries. Tez Johnson for the Buccaneers, probably rostered on a lot of teams, but I think there's a chance for a guy like Tez Johnson. Now, he's in a pretty crowded wide receiver room. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Emeka Egbuka, Jalen McMillan, and then you throw in guys like Sterling Shepard, Trey Palmer. I think Tez Johnson could make the team, kind of supplanting a guy like Trey Palmer. I think the top 4 wide receivers are locked for this team: Sterling Shepard, Trey Palmer, Tez Johnson, maybe a couple other players are maybe fighting for that wide receiver 5 and 6 spot. But Tez Johnson, to me, was a guy that I think we were a little shocked that he fell so as far as he did. A lot of that because of his size. But also, you have to realize when teams are picking players in rounds 4, 5, 6, they're kind of looking for guys that they think can help them on special teams, and not just as return guys, but special teams as not return guys, but special teams as in, punt coverage, kick coverage type of players. And so a guy like Tez Johnson, I don't think is going to be and help you in that type of area, but that doesn't mean he's not talented, but that's why he gets pushed down the board a little bit. I think he has some talent. I think he plays faster than what he ran his 40-yard time. So I would still potentially stash him, see what happens, because, we're talking about a team where Mike Evans is getting older. I mean, Mike Evans is he going to put up 1,000 yards this year? Most likely, but he's going to turn 32 this year. So how much longer do we have of Mike Evans? Chris Godwin is getting older and dealing with an injury. Like, this could be easily Emeka Egbuka, Jalen McMillan, 1-2 in 2026. And then who else is going to kind of round out the receiving room? Maybe Tej Johnson. Mitchell Evans is someone that I really, really, really like as a dynasty stash right now because Mitchell Evans was someone who I kind of liked in the pre-draft process out of Notre Dame, tight end out of Notre Dame. He was drafted in the 5th round. One of the reasons I liked him is because he can block. And he's coming from Notre Dame, so you know damn well he can block. He also has the size. He's 6'5", 250, 260. He's a big boy. He can catch the ball relatively well. Is he like this amazing athlete after the catch? No. But if he was a tight end that was able to play 80% of the snaps, he would catch 3 or 4 he would give you 3 or 4 catches, 40, 50 yards a game and the occasional touchdown. It's kind of what he did at Notre Dame this last year. He will be that base level, low end tight end 1 type of production of 500 yards, 45, 50 catches, and we'll see about the touchdowns. Mitchell Evans, I really like, and who knows, maybe he could be better than that, by the way. But Mitchell Evans, I really like for the Panthers, also because of opportunity. You look at Tommy Tremble, who is still recovering from an injury. I forget exactly what Tommy Tremble had last year. I think Tremble had back surgery, and that only happened in May. And so, like, he could miss most of camp. He's their tight end 1 listed. Jatavian Sanders, who, I think a lot of people liked him as a potential like sleeper last year, but like he also fell to the 4th round of the draft. So it's not like we're talking about some guy who has the lockdown, has the tight end 1 job. If a guy like Mitchell Evans comes out and can be a better blocker than Jatavian Sanders, which, by the way, Jatavian Sanders is not a great blocker, we could be talking about the tight end 1 right here for the Panthers. Like, the opportunity for Mitchell Evans is there, so I would go out and snatch him if I could. Last one here is Bubby Means. It was tough to find one for the Saints, if I'm being honest. Again, it kind of like what I did with Dallas. Like, you could kind of insert a lot of different names here. You could insert Bubby Means, Kevin Austin Jr., Cedric Wilson, Dante Pettis, Mason Tipton, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Like, take your pick of wide receivers. The reason I chose Bubby Means is because I thought it was kind of impressive that this guy last year, he had an ankle injury in week 8, which I think took him out for the entire season. But Bubby Means, as an undrafted free agent, was kind of making his way up, and he was playing the 2 games before he got hurt. He was out there playing 71 and 88% of the snaps. Like, he was a full-time wide receiver, and he had 13 targets in 2 games, 8 catches in 2 games. And then he averaged, he had about 80 yards or so and a touchdown. Literally, the guy in 2 games, now it's a very, very small sample size, but in 2 games, this is what his 17-game pace would have been. It would have been, he would have had 68 catches, 700 yards, 8.5 touchdowns, right? Again, very small sample size, but for an undrafted rookie wide receiver to come in and give you 700 yards, 70 catches, and 8 touchdowns, that's really, really good production. So, again, new coaching staff and everything. Is it going to happen? I don't know, but look at the wide receiver room for the Saints. You have Olave and Rashid Shaheed, and then Brandon Cooks is their wide receiver 3. Brandon Cooks is old. He's going to be 32 years old, hasn't produced really in a couple of years. He was fine for the Cowboys there in 2023, caught 8 touchdowns and so, but it's I don't think he has necessarily this lock wide receiver spot. So I would go out and grab Bubby Means still just to see what happens. So I appreciate everyone for watching. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button and join our Discord. It is free. We'll catch you guys all in the next video.